Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to go over the solutions for the test shown in the previous lecture. Let's get started by opening up a Jupyter notebook. Okay, let's get started with our statements assessment test solutions. The first question wanted us to create a statement that will print out words that start with an S from this string right here. So let's run this cell. So now we have our string defined. So there's our string, and we can use the .split statement, if you recall from the strings lecture, to create a list. And .split by default splits on the white space, so now we have all the words right here. So let's use a for loop to iterate through this. I can say for word in stsplit, and if I just print out the word, I get back the words themselves. But what I want to do is create some sort of if statement that checks if the word starts with an S. So how do I do that? Well, I can actually grab the first letter of the word using indexing. Because these are all strings, I can say word of 0 at index 0, that's the first letter. So I can say if word at index 0, the first letter, is equal to the string S, print word. And there we go, we have start, S, and sentence. Something else I wanted to note here is let's imagine that there was a word here that started with a capital S. So if I say Sam, print only the words that start with an S. If I run this, this actually no longer works because it's missing out this capital S. What I could do is force this letter to be lowercase when I do the comparison in order to compare it to this lowercase s. So there's two ways I could do this. I could say if word 0, when it's lowercase, is equal to lowercase s, and then I do grab Sam right here. So that's one way I could do that. The other way I could do that is just compare both a lowercase s and a capital S. I could say if word is equal to s right here, so if this first letter is equal to lowercase s, or word 0 is equal to capital S. And then that's the exact same thing. Typically what you're going to see from a more experienced Python programmer is the call of lower instead of or, because it's less code and it looks a little cleaner. So that's a way you could deal with capital S's if they happen to be in that string. To keep it simple, we didn't have that, but just keep that in mind. Up next, we wanted you to use range to print out all the even numbers from 0 to 10. So that's pretty straightforward, and there's lots of ways you could have done this. You could have just said list range 0, 11, 2, and there we have all the numbers. But if we actually wanted you to print them, you could have said for num in range 0, 11, 12, print out num, and we would have accepted that as well. So either one of these is fine. Main thing I want you to realize is that range, you'd have to say up to 11 if you want to go to 10. And then we have to have 2 as the step size. Next, we want you to use a list comprehension to create a list of all numbers between 1 and 50 that are divisible by 3. So the way we can do that is the following. We'll say x for x in range, and we'll go from 1 up to 51 because we want to go up to 50. So we'll go up to, but not including 51. And then we can say if x mod 3 is equal to 0. So we run that and we get back these results. And this was really similar to other examples we saw when we were printing out all the even numbers. Here we're just checking if they're divisible by 3 instead. Evenly divisible, that is. Next question was to go through the string below, and if the length of a word is even, print even. So let's do that. It's going to be very similar to the first question. We'll say for word in stsplit, except now the if statement is going to check the length of the word. We're going to say if the length of the word when divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, I will print out the word. Or I will print out even. Doesn't really matter what you do here. We can say print is even, so I'm just using some string concatenation there. So only is even, that is even, with even, etc. So there you have it. The next question is a really common question called Fizzbuzz. And that's where we have to write a program that prints out the integers from 1 to 100, except we're going to replace integers with words when they're multiples of 3, multiples of 5, or if they're multiples of both 3 and 5. And there's a bit of a trick to this one, but first let's figure out how to actually print the numbers. We're going to say for num in range 1 to 101, because that actually gives us back all the way to 100. And the first thing we need to check is multiples of both 3 and 5. Often, what beginners will do is they'll make the mistake of checking for 3 first, then checking for 5, and then checking for 3 and 5. But the problem with that is multiples of both 3 and 5 are technically also a multiple of 3. So you accidentally end up printing out fizz when you should be printing out Fizzbuzz. So the very first thing you need to check for, logically, is 3 and 5 with Fizzbuzz. So we will say if num mod 3 is equal to 0 and num mod 5 is equal to 0, we will print out Fizzbuzz. Then we can check for the other cases. So we can say elif num mod 3 is equal to 0, print out fizz, and then we could say elif num mod 5 is equal to 0, print out buzz. Else, remember we want to print the integers, so else we'll just print out the integer. Print the number itself. So when you run this, you get back 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz, and if you keep going all the way to 15, finally you get Fizzbuzz. So the main trick here is to check for 3 and 5 first. That way you don't accidentally trigger one of these by accident. Then moving on to the next question, we wanted to use list comprehension to create a list of the first letters of every word in the string below. And to do this, it's going to be a bit similar to what we did before. We say word for word in st.split, but I just want to grab the actual first letter. So if I were to run this, it would bring me back all the words. I just want the first letter. So here I index for 0, and when I run that, I get back the first letter for every word in the string. Okay, that's it. Take some time to review these. A lot of these are kind of tricky and you have to wrap your head around them at first, but hopefully with this solution review, you kind of start getting the idea of applying and mixing the ideas that we've just talked about together to solve real problems. Coming up next, we're going to go to the next section where we're going to begin understanding things like functions. I'll see you there.